Earth First Food, algae, and mushrooms and fungi, and some of the other natural ingredients that we use in our different products, I think it really adds a lot of value to that. On top of that, you add the platform that once you get to be able to talk to this, there's an opportunity not only to create a positive impact and educate a person of influence, but it's to take it to the next level and give that person of influence another stream of revenue, which I think that's part of any successful person or trying to be successful person will talk about, spreading your basket, putting different eggs in different baskets and looking for multiple streams of income, multiple streams of revenue. And to add an additional sense while you're doing something good, that's always a positive thing. And I think that's really something that our platform allows as well.
Yeah, it really does. And my goodness, it's important to have people that come from all walks, right? People that are brand new, that don't know anything, people that are coming at it and learning as they grow, and those that are experts. And you know what, Bilal, it's great business advice, and it's also great timing. So thank you. And I do actually have our guest star for tonight that is joining us.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you everyone for being on the call. Really excited about it.
Hello, Kevin.
Well, hello.
It's good to be on.
It is good to be with you as well, Dr. Bruno. Great to have you. Really looking forward to spending some time with you this evening, getting to share what you have with a lot of different people. Now, just by way of introduction, for those that are joining us new on the call, okay? Dr. Bruno is a licensed clinical psychologist and an integrative mental health specialist. He lives in Pacifica, California, land of the glowing algae out of the ocean. He'll probably tell you a little bit about that. He's the author of a very incredible book, Eat Light and Feel Bright. That's microalgae solutions for individual and planetary health. He is a pioneer in the emerging field of nutritional psychology, and he's conducted research on the cognitive, emotional, and behavioral benefits of eating Aphanizomenon floss aqua for children. And moreover, he's worked with hundreds of children diagnosed with ADHD using a combined AFA microalgae and Feingold dietary intervention strategy. So he is a scientist, he's a clinician, and really just a heck of a thinker. And we're lucky to have him. So Dr. Bruno, welcome to the call.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate I invited on, and hello to everybody out there in listening land. It's good to be with you.
Well, it's good to have you. Now, Dr. Bruno, there are a lot of people who maybe are just getting to know you. Maybe they're just being introduced to your background. So, I mean, I did my best, and honestly, a career like yours is hard to sum up. So maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and the focus of your work.
Sure. First of all, I'd like to say the reason I wasn't able to get on the video Zoom is I'm actually traveling with my family, and we're in Port Clinton, Ohio right now, right next to Lake Erie. And so we're actually kind of on a traveling trip right now. So I'm glad I'm able to at least speak with you and hear you. My background has, I've always, there's many reasons we end up being in the places that we end up in our lives. And so it's hard to pinpoint it to one area. And I'm not going to do a whole litany of my life story. But I can say this is that when I was in college, one of my favorite classes was vegetation in Wisconsin. It was a botany class, college level, where we just did field trips every week, going to see the ecology in the plants. And I just became really fascinated by the living, history, the ecology of plants in the botanical kingdom. And particularly what impressed me was the fact that plant cells really are so remarkably similar to animal cells. So it started me thinking that, at that point I was thinking, well, there's so much just to learn from these very elemental kingdoms. But I pursued a degree in psychology because I've always been interested in consciousness and mental health. And so I have a master's degree in experimental psychology and a PhD in clinical psychology, and have been eating and benefiting from our beloved Klamath Lake algae, our wild body and wild mind, for decades now, and have also done some studies looking at the benefits of our algae with children with learning difficulties, and then have also worked with the algae. I'm licensed as a psychologist, and have also introduced my clients and many, many people to the algae for the health benefits.
So that sounds like an awful lot of school, but suffice to say, you've spent a lot of time with not just the AFA and not just algae, on its own, but really a lot of different things that could potentially impact maybe the mental state of individuals, as well as, of course, some of your focus with child psychology and children. Is that a safe thing to say, a fair thing to say?
That is definitely a safe, fair thing to say. Yeah. And
so,
yeah, it's true.
Just a quick question, just right off the top. What is the primary benefit of AFA versus so many other maybe nutrients that they could use? Why is AFA so special? Is it special?
It definitely is very special, and the way I look at why it's unique is from several approaches. One, looking at biodiversity. Two, looking at the unique nutrient profile of the algae, and particularly three, also the brain food aspects that are quite unique to our algae itself. So, starting with the biodiversity, I don't know if any of you have seen the Littlest Farm documentary. I think that's the title of it, The Biggest Littlest Farm. It's remarkable about how this young couple took a traditional farm and turned it into a biodynamic, organic, very biodiverse farm. And it was really a lesson in biodiversity. And I think the algae plays a role in our dietary biodiversity that few people really appreciate. And so just the snapshot of the biodiversity piece is this. Most people eat plants and animals, and that's pretty much it. And occasionally they'll put some fungi. But algae, and particularly microalgae, which is much smaller celled than the macroalgae, is food that, for Americans particularly, is really underrepresented in the diet, but is an important aspect of creating a more biodiverse diet. Why is biodiversity in the diet essential? Again, kind of referring back to that movie, when they first showed the soil, they were trying to, Kevin, did you see that movie, or have you seen it?
I have seen it, yeah. And
do you remember that scene where they tried to take a shovel and stick it into the earth, and it was like hitting rock?
Yeah.
The soil was so compacted.
Right.
And so the first emphasis was to get the soil more filled with microorganisms, and really they did that by spending the first 2-3 years just composting, putting as much nutrients into the soil. Well, a similar thing exists with our intestinal tract. Our composting happens in our microbiome, and the microbiome is where some of the most exciting research in nutrition is happening right now, particularly nutrition and mental health. We're finding that people with serious mental health issues and less serious, like anxiety and depression, all the way up to schizophrenia and bipolar, have different microbiome than normal, typical people. And we don't exactly know why, but we do know that somehow this accumulation of bacterial gut talks to the brain and talks to the nervous system. And so the first thing to think of when you're trying to appreciate microalgae's role in our particular type of microalgae's role in health, particularly brain health, is to consider how adding more unique nutrients that the microalgae has, particularly these kind of nutrients that have been shown to help enhance the microbiome, along with the probiotics that we have and the enzymes we have, really creates a greater biodiversity of not only food, but of the type of healthy bacteria in the gut. It contributes to it. So our algae feeds the gut like very few other foods do.
Yeah, that's an interesting branch of research right now. There's increasing interest in this gut-brain axis. So for those that are joining the call and maybe want to learn a little bit more about the gut-brain axis, what is that, and why is it impacted by super nutrients like the AFA?
Well, the old timers, like the old naturopaths and nutritional folk that I was first studying with 40 years ago, used to always talk about the gut-brain connection. And they knew that if you wanted to improve the brain, you had to start with the gut. Well, everybody else thought that was pure nonsense. But after 40 years, scientists, at major universities all over the world are starting to study the microbiome and saying, yes, indeed, there is this connection between the gut and the brain. And it seems to work at multiple levels, primarily, there's a production of different type of metabolites, so different chemicals are produced by these microorganisms that can, like for instance, we produce the most serotonin in our gut. Now, some of that particular type of serotonin isn't necessarily used by the brain, but it does start to provide different metabolites that can be used by the brain in our body. So you could say there's a lot of nutrients that are uniquely produced by these bacteria in the gut. The second part is the status of, and nobody's really explained this to me, but they've shown that the vagal nervous system, which speaks to our ability to relax and to be in the present moment and to help decrease anxiety and stress, that part of our nervous system is intimately connected to the microbiome as well. And there's a few other areas of how the microbiome can directly affect the nervous system, but those are the two main ones that have been identified.
There's one other thing that I've always appreciated about you, Dr. Bruno, and that is for you, that this is also personal. You are what you eat, you practice what you preach. How long have you been consuming the AFA microalgae, and how have you incorporated it into your work with your clients?
I've been eating the AFA microalgae over, I started eating the AFA algae when a naturopath introduced it to me back in 83, so 1983. So you can do the calculations, over 30, I think over 35 years. And that was when it was just first being harvested from the lake. And it's been a consistent part of my diet ever since. And really, one of the reasons I want to get to the other 2 points I talked about from biodiversity, is that I think it's just such an essential food group. Microalgae is an essential food group. It should be something that everybody takes to increase really the biodiversity of their diet.
Yeah, and there's a history to that, right? So one of the things I learned from you that I found fascinating is that this isn't new. Ancient cultures used algae, cultivated algae. Tell the folks a little bit about that.
Sure. we have records that when the Spanish conquistadors first came to the New World, particularly landed in what is now kind of Mexico City in that area, there was a huge fields of kind of what people today would call aquaculture, but there literally was beds and beds and beds of blue-green algae that were established there, and the local Indians were using that, adding that, as a additional staple to their food, and the Spanish conquistadors, went about destroying it because they had no understanding that microalgae was even a food group, or, much less appreciating the remarkable nutrient properties of microalgae. We also know in other cultures in Asia and Africa, microalgae has been used for a long, long time. And indirectly, people eat microalgae all the time. So it's in the soil, it's in fish. It actually influences plant growth. So it's definitely in the food chain, but to be able to get it directly and purely in the way that we now have available with New Earth is quite remarkable. And I do also want to get to some of the unique nutritional aspects of it, particularly related to the brain too, at some point.
Well, yeah, that's where I was headed. Let's talk about that. So these ancient cultures, they must have known something that perhaps we're just starting to figure out, and it definitely had to have had some nutritional impact and benefit. So then, as today, what is some of that nutritional benefit? What does that? What can a person expect?
Everybody is unique. Let's start there. Recently somebody told me this phrase, which I really love, and they were saying, when you look at people's outsides and you see how individual everybody looks from the outsides, we somehow think that the insides of everybody is the same, but actually the insides of people are far more diverse than the exterior appearances of people. And that is true, of what people sometimes require from their nutrition. There are more individual differences, and so people will respond differently to what they eat. But that said, what's unique about the algae, particularly for brain function, is it has so many layers of nutrients that are easily digestible, so in high bioavailability, and so it has B vitamins, which it's particularly good for the nervous system and brain. It has microalgae really is the source of most of the DHA and omega-3 that fish concentrate. When you're taking fish oil, you're actually taking to some degree concentrated microalgae, because the fish get it from the microalgae, and so it has that brain essential fatty acid component in it. It also has trace minerals in such a wide variety that it's very rare to find, and then it's extremely high in protein, so up to around 60% protein, but not just any kind of protein, all of the essential amino acids and most of the non-essential amino acids that we can't that we can get from other dietary sources, and it's in such a form, it's very so digestible and balanced, and then it has the light pigment properties, the antioxidants, and certain light pigments that literally speak to our brain and can help enhance the production of neurotransmitters, and so it's like a super multivitamin without the kind of petrochemical synthesis behind so many vitamins, particularly multivitamins. I mean, it's a whole food multivitamin, but it really has qualities that no single multivitamin has.
Yeah, which is interesting, because a lot of people today, maybe they go to visit their doctor, they are told what they're lacking, and so they do what they think is best, simply maybe out of a lack of knowledge. They run to the store, they buy a multivitamin, or they buy the vitamin D they told they were short on, or maybe one of the minerals as well. And why is it that when those ingredients come in the complexity or simple nature of a food, is it better?
Yeah, and, it's a good question, because even as I say, it's a super multivitamin. It really doesn't do the algae justice. I've had people come into my office literally with a shopping bag of bottles and bottles and bottles of vitamins, minerals, amino acids, various things, and in many of them are not really being well absorbed by the person's body, or they might be creating nutrient excesses, that may even imbalance that person. And very often I will, really eliminate most of what they bring in or they're on, and then I add the our wild body, wild mind, and make sure they're on probiotics. I love to have enzymes included in that as well, and sometimes some other of the products as well. And they'll often start experiencing a enhancement in health, mental clarity, energy, improved mood, ability to concentrate better in ways that this whole shopping bag wasn't able to do for them. So why is it? So it's, clearly that shopping bag of, 15 different bottles had a lot of nutrients. Certainly the labels were pretty impressive with the range of things contained within all those bottles. But why wasn't it speaking to their body, speaking to their cells, speaking to their microbiome, or speaking to their brain in a way that a simple wild whole food could? And again, I think it's, there's something we haven't been able to duplicate. Thomas Edison had this phrase, and I don't have the quote in front of me. I'll definitely be using it at the meeting, the gathering we're going to be having in Klamath Falls. But it goes something like this: until scientists can create a blade of grass, really, we do kind of delude ourselves into thinking we know much about what the power of nature, or what really drives life itself. And so there's something about the way that all these different, and it's very likely thousands of different constituents within the algae, all these different parts that make up the algae that have been developed over billions and billions of years to create, this really, some people say Earth's most perfect food, that isn't easily duplicated by just isolating a bunch of nutrients, in laboratories, or extracting, a few things from different plant groups.
Right. It's almost arrogance, right? Like, well, we can probably knock that out in an afternoon in the lab, right? Good luck. Good luck. It's just not built that way.
That is true. And the other part is the algae. It's something that every time I go back to try to understand what is going on with the algae, I always learn new things. And so I'll be sharing some new things at Klamath Falls coming up from some of the research that's continuing to be done. And there's just an explosion of research on microalgae. It still hasn't made its way into, most people's, awareness. But for instance, these light pigment molecules, like would be found in wild mind, are really so small, some of them, that they're literally like nanoparticles. They're down to about 40 nano microns, and and so your body, they can operate at such a small level, but they can also go into the bloodstream, go through the blood-brain barrier, and these light pigment molecules literally can interact with our neurohormonal system, and enhance dopamine production, or enhance serotonin, or help balance the brain chemistry in ways that we're just starting to appreciate. But people who've been consuming the microalgae, most people notice. If a person's been consuming it for any length of time, most people notice that there's something added to their life force or their life experience that wasn't there before they started being regularly consuming the microalgae.
Right. And I think there's something interesting about that relationship between, something that actually harvests light, and this idea that it's leveraged to, hence the name of your book, Eat Light, Feel Bright. Why did you pick a title like that? It's very profound.
Well, thank you. I didn't come up with the phrase. One of my friends and algae advocates, Shoshone, was the one who used that term. I heard him use it so many times, but I didn't fully appreciate what, really the truth of what he was saying until I started really looking at the science, as well as just, having consumed the algae long enough. And the idea is that ultimately all of our food comes from the sun, directly or indirectly. And and to think that the main energy source that really fuels our planet on so many levels is not indispensable to life would just be foolhardy. And so the microalgae, the blue-green algae, was the first microorganism to develop photosynthesis capabilities, and literally terraformed our planet for about 1 billion years before multicellular organisms were able to come on board. And so there are properties within the microalgae related to its ability to harvest sunlight and use those, those light pigment molecules to do that harvesting. But the other part of it, it had to also adapt and create light pigment molecules that protected it from its sun, because the sun can also create all this damage, particularly to essential fatty acids and nucleotides and DNA type of structures, that it develops some of the most effective protective antioxidant light pigment molecules. And so we're finding that one of the essential nutrients that most people don't really consider, everybody talks about vitamins and minerals, and now people are talking about probiotics, and people talk about fiber or protein, carbohydrates, and so forth. But really, the color of the plants that we eat are a really important part of the health, and it's probably one of the reasons why researcher after researcher has found that people who consume a variety of vegetables and fruits tend to be healthier than people who don't consume a lot of plants. And it's because you're also taking in all these different light pigment molecules. Well, the algae has a wider and uniquer assortment of light pigment molecules than practically any other plants. Microalgae are just so remarkable at with their light pigment molecules.
Oh, it's fantastic. Well, Dr. Bruno, I really, really am looking forward to your presentation at New Earth University in Klamath Falls. It's going to be an absolute blast. I'm looking forward to all the folks that are joining us on tonight's call that are planning to be there. Folks, if you haven't made a plan to be there, you really haven't heard the whole story. Dr. Bruno, how long could you talk about algae?
Well, there are certain physical limits, but it's something that frankly, I've been studying for decades and decades, and though I wouldn't be able to talk for decades and decades, I could certainly, I plan on continuing to study, the health benefits of microalgae for the rest of my life, and I know that it's something I'll continue to learn more every year. It's such a remarkable organism, so I could certainly talk for a while.
And honestly, and we could listen.
Looking forward to the 40 minutes I get to share.
Oh, yeah. Trust me, we could listen for long and long and long and long. It's without question very good information. So I will tell you this: if you would like to learn more about Dr. Bruno and about the algae, and maybe about how it can potentiate some of the other ingredients that we sell, why we make some of the products that we make, the manner that we make them, and what New Earth really is all about, please join us at New Earth University in Klamath Falls, Oregon, September 20th to the 22nd. You can register at events.newearth.com. And Dr. Bruno, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. I appreciate being able to be on the call. I look forward to seeing folks in Klamath Falls as well.
Excellent. And I know that they feel the same way. Thanks a lot, Dr. Bruno.
You're welcome. Okay. All right. Good night.
Bye-bye. There you have it, folks. A great guy looking to share a great message, and we would love to have you. So please make plans, and it's a good time to get registered to get over to Klamath Falls. It's one of the more beautiful parts of the country. So you'll be in some amazing surroundings, hearing some incredible information. Thank you, Bilal, for joining us earlier on the call, and Dr. Bruno. And we will see all of you soon. Bye-bye.